Okay team, so we are here for part 2, and in today's video we're going to be reviewing 5 of my favorite and most effective VWAP strategies. Again, I am a day trader that is green on the year that has been trading the VWAP for over 5 years now, and I do have an assortment of strategies that I use on an everyday basis. I will say though, as you're watching this video, make sure to understand that I can't guarantee any of these setups or strategies will work for you. These setups have been incredibly profitable for me. Just try to make sure you really understand not only the nuances behind the setups, but the necessary conditions in order to have success with them. And we're going to do our best to list those in this video as well. So before we get started, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell if you want an alert anytime we go live or drop a new video. And with all of that said and out the way, let's take a look. Okay, so for my first example here, we're going to look at a VWAP reclaim or a fake out fade. Now, these are two different names to describe a strategy that is both long and short. So one's on the long side, one is on the short side, but the basic premise behind the strategy is the same. And what we're looking for here is large rejections or large breakouts under or over the VWAP. You know, you can see this example here on the SPY, which we're going to be using really heavily as examples here in this class. You can see a really big rejection under the volume weighted average price. When that happens, and the big rejection is really important here because you need to have some emotion. You need to have some trend changing emotion, if that makes sense, as the move ultimately happens. And so once you get a big move under the VWAP, as you can see here on this first one, I'm shorting into that very first pop up to test the VWAP level. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to move all the way up like the second pop up to the VWAP here before the rejection after that. It just needs to be a small pop up to the volume weighted average price, or at least around it, as you can see with both of these. In both of these examples, what I'm going to generally be doing here is I'm going to be shorting into the pop and then covering around that previous low of the day. Again, I'm shorting into the pop and I'm covering around the previous low of the day. And if it continues going down, great. I'm at least taking a partial at that low of the day level, because that's where experienced traders are generally going to take a partial. And then to look at the long side example immediately after that here, again, what are we looking for? We're looking for a big emotional move. In this case, it's over the VWAP. And so we have this big move over the volume weighted average price. And just like the last one, in this case, on the long side, we are buying a small pullback to the volume weighted average price. Something else that really helps these trades is wicks in the downward direction if it's on the long side, and in the upward direction if it's on the short side. In both of these, you can see wicks on the upside here really showing you that there's some, weakness on this one and some strength on this one here. And so these down wicks indicate buying pressure. Whenever the candle goes all the way down and then immediately gets pushed back up, again, that's indicative of buying pressure. And when we have these wicks here, that means that this candlestick went up and it got pushed down really quickly, which is in this case on the short side indicative of selling pressure. And so those are just a few different things that give these setups and strategies success. And just to put it into perspective one more time, we're looking for big emotional moves. On the short side here, it was a big emotional move on the downside here under the volume weighted average price. On the long side, it was a big emotional move with volume coming in on the long side, ripping over the VWAP here. And again, on both of these examples, we're either shorting into the small pops afterwards, or we're buying up the small dips to the volume weighted average price, and again, covering at previous highs or lows of the day. And so I hope all of that makes sense. It's a really powerful strategy that you can take advantage of some emotion in the markets. And again, this is a strategy that a lot of professional traders use, and it's been one that I've been using to make money with the VWAP for years now. And so I hope all of this makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat or comments below. Okay, so for my next example, we're going to look at a quick rejection VWAP fade. Now, what a VWAP fade is just a basic attack of a downward trend. Generally, with the VWAP fade, you're going to be looking for a stock to maintain a downward trend, and then you're just going to short it somewhere around the volume weighted average price and wait for it to pull back to test previous lows of the day. And so we call it a VWAP fade. It's kind of fading underneath the VWAP here. Now, with the quick rejection fake out fade, or with the quick rejection VWAP fade, we're looking looking for the stock to move all the way up to test the volume weighted average price. Now, there's something that really needs to happen for this specific strategy, is that we need to kind of look like we're changing trends a little bit. In this case, you can see we're moving up, we break over the volume weighted average price, and we're holding up there for some time. And then after that, what we're looking for is a quick rejection back below the VWAP here. Now, this is going to reinforce a few different things. Number one, it's going to reinforce that downward trend that we want to attack. Number two, it's going to reinforce long traders covering their positions. And so when this happens, a lot of long traders are cutting the trade, short traders are much more confident, and all of that equals more towards downward action. And so once we get that big rejection under the VWAP, when we looked like we might change trends for a little bit, we're shorting into the small pop afterwards. And you might get a few opportunities of this, and it's actually a really nice risk reward trade because you have a really obvious risk level. You know, if you're going short in this instance, you can use this previous high up here as your risk. And so if the stock continues to push up and breaks over this level, you can just stop out of the trade and move on with your day. But again, I do think this is going to be a really high accuracy setup. I use it a ton in the markets, attacking these type of downward trends. And just like the last example, what we're doing here is we're capitalizing on emotion. You know, when we look like we might change trends and then we get a big rejection, like I said before, that really reinforces weakness, that really reinforces bearish action, and it's just a lot more likely that we're going to continue on the downward direction as long as the stock is acting reasonably. And so that's why I attack it there, again, using a reward target maybe of the previous low of the day down here, maybe take a partial there and continue to write it down and kind of short it into these pops and write it back down. That's the usual flow I get as I'm shorting these VWAP fades. And so I hope all of that makes sense. And again, just like the last few examples, if you want to ask me anything, leave it in the comments below. Okay, so for my next strategy, I'm looking at the range break VWAP bounce. And as the name suggests, in that first 15 to 20 minutes, we're looking for a specific sideways range. Now, I talked about this setup a little bit in the previous VWAP class here, but again, we're looking for a sideways range. One of my favorite ways to identify this is by pulling out TOS's rectangle tool and just drawing a sideways range and see if it mostly fits within this rectangle. When that happens, our main goal here is waiting for that sideways range to break. And the VWAP is telling us it's sideways. How do we know it's sideways? Because it's not respecting the VWAP at all. It's kind of just chopping over and under, and so it's in a sideways range. What we're doing for this type of VWAP bounce is we're waiting for that range to break, and then we're buying the pullback to the VWAP here. Now you can see we had the range break right here. We had the break all the way up to, up to this 432.50 level. Once we get that, that's when we start targeting a pullback, because a continuation of an upward trend is much more likely when we get this type of high of the day break. Other traders have renewed optimism. Other traders see it starting to move now, and it might show up on their scanners a little bit more when we break highs of the day. And so betting that that upward trend is going to continue by buying pullbacks to the VWAP after that makes a lot of sense in terms of probabilities. That way you can capitalize on this upward movement. You can capitalize on the potential upward trend that's going to start forming. And one thing you'll see me do a lot with these type of strategies is I'm using the previous high of the day as a reward target. And so in this instance, you buy the pullback around here and you take profit around the previous high of the day. You don't have to sell your entire position, but you can take some profit, protect the trade, so that if it turns around, you're still pretty protected in that situation. You don't have to worry about having a big drawdown because you've already taken profit, again, attacking the top of the range as the previous high of the day level. And so again, just a really easy way to bet on an upward trend continuing, and it's one of my favorite to use using the VWAP. So for my next setup and strategy, it's just the simple VWAP bounce. But the most important thing if you're going to take advantage of a VWAP bounce strategy is you 100% need the stock to be trending well. And what I mean by trending well is that you can take a look at the SPY on this specific day. It's holding the VWAP incredibly well, and so we call this trending well. And when this happens, you wait for a few different confirmations. In this case, you can identify kind of two different support holds at the volume weighted average price, and then you start attacking pullbacks. Now, some traders like attacking pullbacks all the way down to the VWAP like you can see here, and that works great if you're attacking a longer term VWAP bounce strategy. You can hold it a really long way and get a lot of reward out of that trade, or you can attack smaller pullbacks like this one here, which is what I generally do as well. What I try to do is I try to find previous high of the day support like You can see right here where we're pulling back to a previous support level. If it can be a whole dollar like 414 or any type of whole dollar, that's even better as a psychological pullback area. And again, I'm just attacking the range. I'm buying the pullback here. I'm taking profit at the highs, buying the pullback. If it doesn't work, I move on with my day, and I'm just attacking this trend that you can see forming here. You know, a lot of the time stocks will maintain beautiful trends all day, and so your job is to identify when a stock or security is doing that and then attack the pullbacks, you know, taking advantage of the upward trend. A lot of traders like to set risk levels at previous pullback areas as well. And so if I was going to buy this dip here, I could set a risk at this previous pullback level as well and have a really tight risk. You can see my risk is only down to here, and my potential reward, if I'm using a previous high of the day as a reward target, is way up here, giving me a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 reward to risk ratio, if that makes sense. And so this is one of the ways that traders can set themselves up for really profitable organic situations, and it's one of my favorite ways to capitalize and ultimately profit from the VWAP, if that makes sense. And so as always, let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so the last example on my list today is the red to green VWAP rejection. And what I mean by that is I want to find a stock that is pushing up in a really obvious way at the opening bell. In this case, I have Apple pulled up here, and you can see not only do we get a support hold at the VWAP right here, but we get a really nice push up towards the 165.50 area. Once we get that really obvious bullish strength at the opening bell, we're looking for a quick and sudden turnaround that's going to unleash some emotion on the downside. And so what do we get is we get 3 really huge red candles and just a big rejection under the volume weighted average price. All the traders that were once bullish in this move are now starting to think bearish. They're selling their long positions, they're jumping in short, and we're going to ride the curtails of that type of momentum. And so the way we look for this is we wait for the big rejection move, and again we short into the small pop up to the volume weighted average price. It doesn't necessarily have to hit, you know, the VWAP in order for us to short it. We can actually use it as a risk level. If it pushes back above there, we cut it, and then we just try to ride down this downward trend. What I generally like to do is I like to short into these pops, cover at the bottom, short into the pop, cover at the bottom, and just rinse and repeat that until it stops working. It will eventually stop working. As you can see here, we eventually push back up, but if it works, you know, 4 out of 5 times, that's still 80% accuracy. And so it's just a really profitable strategy, and honestly, this is one of my favorite strategies when I'm trading the VWAP. And so I hope all of these strategies make sense, guys. These are some of my most profitable, and again, this is coming from somebody that has traded the VWAP for years now, that is green on this year trading it, and I just hope it all makes sense. If you have any questions you want to ask me, or if you want to be prepared for our next class, I'll include some links in the description below. The first one is for our website. You can sign up to our newsletter and become a member and get early access, get course material, all that good stuff on our website, and I'll include that in the description. The other links are for scanning tools, potentially, you know, Benzinga. You know, we do have a completely free Discord, and I'll include all of that in the description below. Be sure to check it out. Thanks for watching, team, and we'll see you all for our next class.